I'm a believer that we don't have a problem here about Republicans versus Democrats. We have a problem of America versus the establishment. What are America First principles and policies, and what is the establishment doing? Establishment cronyism is alive and strong in the state of Utah.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the 435 podcast. I'm your host, Robert McFarland, and buckle up. We had a great episode today talking about the Republican primary ticket. So in your mailboxes, any day now, you're going to get your primary ballot in the mail to vote for which Republican is going to be on the general election in November. Gary Henderson and I sat down and we talked at length about each one of the races, the most important ones, and to give you our perspective on each one so that you can help educate you on what you where you should vote, where you should land. Our opinions are just our own. They're not influenced by anybody else, but we hope you get some value out of it. Enjoy this episode. We'll see you out there, guys. Thank you again to our brand sponsors, just our local business partners, in the sense that they want to see us succeed. We want them to succeed. FS Coffee Company in downtown St. George, Blue Form Media, our producers, they do an amazing job. And also Tuacahn Amphitheater. We're super grateful to be partners with them and getting the word out for Frozen, which is now their season has just started. So go check out Tuacahn, check out Frozen, check out FS Coffee Company. Enjoy this episode, guys. We'll see you out there. So on the Washington County Republican site, Phil won 60% of the delegate vote, right?
Greater than 60. I think it was like
67
and a half.
Yeah, 67. So why is Cox on the primary ballot?
Great.
Why don't they just go straight to the general election?
So this is a great conversation. And it's interesting to understand the distinctions of Utah law with respect to the convention system and then other laws that play into effect for how candidates get onto a primary ballot. Mm-hmm. So in the Republican Party, we have a caucus convention system. Mm-hmm. And as candidates go through that caucus convention system, we hold a caucus that elects delegates, and those delegates then go and vet all of the candidates across all of the races. Mm-hmm. And then we have these big conventions, county convention and a state convention. At the state conventions, like 4,000 delegates gather statewide to nominate.
It was crazy to be up there.
Oh, it was an amazing experience. It was my first one. Mm-hmm. I'd never been to one before.
I also realized the Salt Palace is not a palace. It does not look like a palace. Like the room
looks nothing like a palace.
In there is like a concrete lined building.
Inside looks nothing like a palace. Outside looks nothing like a palace.
Yeah,
so my expectations were kind of well up higher, and I was let down as I walked across the street to get to it.
I think I had been there one other time, but I think I was in like a smaller theater portion of it, which might have been a little bit nicer, but anyway, that's a total sidebar.
I did walk by the theater rooms and one looked well decorated. So
at one point they probably thought this is a palace. Yeah. At one point in history,
they did.
I think that the Jazz used to play there, like before the Delta Center was built. They played in the Salt Palace. Anyway,
oh wow.
So at the Salt Palace, 4,000 delegates. It's the caucus system. If you're listening and you're not familiar with what the caucus system is, it's definitely a topic that I'm going to cover actually later today with Rob Axon. I'm going to have him on. I'm going to interview him specifically on the caucus system.
Interesting.
But the main portion of today's conversation is reviewing the primary ballot.
Right. That's right.
That everybody is going to get if you're a registered Republican.
That's right.
Only if you're a Republican, not if you're an independent. If you're an independent, you don't get to vote in the Republican primary.
That's correct.
And of course, if you're a Democrat, you can't do that.
Unless you're a Democrat who has joined the Republican Party in order to influence how Republicans are chosen.
Yeah, which it happens. It's part of the game, right? There's like certain rules to the game, and there's no like blood oath. There's no like testing. You just have to. If you want to be a part of the party, you sign up to be part of the party, and then you get a vote in the primary.
But I like where you're going. I hear you recommending a blood oath.
A blood oath? I did not.
I think that I think I heard that recommendation. I'm with you.
There's no requirement of a blood oath. This is a whole nother conversation around what is a zealot? What is a zealot? And I couldn't help but think. So this is one of the things too. and I don't want to go too far down this road, but there's portions of every faction there's portions of every party, factions of each party that are very zealous, that are blood oath types. And then you get this bell curve of people that are disconnected, that are not engaged. And it's something I think Michelle Tanner actually was talking about this on her podcast with Rob Axon about how, there's this tendency to not want to talk about politics and religion, right, in our culture at this point. And after decades of doing that, when you go through a whole generation of telling your population that you're not supposed to talk about politics and religion, what you get left with is the ones that do talk about it are the most zealous, the ones that are most passionate, the most fired up, that are like blood oath on becoming a party member. But that's just not the reality of what the vast majority of the voter, the person that actually submits their vote, that's just not their perspective. And so many of them are disconnected. So the purpose of today is to say, if you have been disconnected, if you haven't, maybe if you're just not super interested, but you want to take an hour out of your day and listen to, the Republican primary ticket, who's going to come into the ballot. Right. Let's get some perspectives on it. That's what we want to do right now. So that's what I think we're going to dive into. But
all right, so let's get back to how do people get on the ballot? So
how is Spencer and Phil on the primary?
So you have your convention system, and that convention then has rules at which you become your convention winner. And at the state level, that's if you get over 60%. You are the convention winner. Right. Because if somebody gets 60%, that means all the other candidates, no one else got 40%. And so really the way the rules are written is kind of the other way. It's if you achieve 40%, you have earned yourself a spot on the ballot. Right. So if there's two people above 40%, both of those people get onto the ballot. That's the way the rules are written. But there's another rule. There's this bill, SB 54.
So this is a rule outside of party rules. So this is something too that gets Well, so this is a state law.
This one, SB 54 or the percentage?
SB 54.
SB 54 is outside of the party. Sorry, I thought you were still going on the 40% thing.
Yeah,
the 40%
so we have bylaws
within the party.
And this is the thing that's so confusing. And I think this is why a lot of people are like, the caucus is so confusing, because you just have a set of rules set up by the party, right, that have been agreed upon by active members, people that are there on a regular basis.
The only thing that matters by members of that party.
Exactly. Right? In my opinion, I agree. Yeah, I think we both agree to this. And then this SB 54 throws in, but the state legislature is going to make this law that now the party has to abide by. That's right. Which has precedent, whether you agree with it or not, is a sidebar. But it just kind of complicates what the rule situation is. So many people I've talked to say, well, the caucus system seems so confusing. Well, it's not confusing. Yeah. It's just not super simple as like a primary, right? But if we're going to dumb it down to the lowest common denominator, that's right, then we're going to end up with what the
caucus convention system gets you a set of people who are highly informed. So low volume, high information about every candidate. I mean, like I spent upwards of over 100 hours going to meetings with candidates, debates with candidates, interviewing them, asking them questions one-on-one in order to form my opinions. Mm-hmm. These are things that a primary voter will never do. So in a normal primary, you have low information, high volume.
Well, and you couldn't even expect the normal voter to do this because they're because they have families, they have jobs, they have other interests that it's like, politics is important. I know it's important, but I just don't really care, right? A lot of people are just that way, which is fine. Right. But
my entire life, I never cared about the state auditor position.
Yeah. Even still to this day, I don't care.
I've interviewed those candidates. So I actually took an interest because I swore, I don't know what I swore an oath, but I promised that I would go and vet candidates.
You made a promise. It's an oath. You made a promise. If you get nominated, if you go to the caucus, the neighborhood caucus, you raise your right hand. It's an oath. Yeah. So I did the same thing. I was a county delegate. I am a county delegate. I have 2 years that I sit as a county delegate, vice chair, precinct 7. So it's an oath, but we're committed to it, right? That's right. It's like you're promising to go through this scenario.
And so in addition to what the party gets to say for how for how Republicans get chosen to be on the primary ballot. Now the state comes in and says, oh, well, we want other candidates to be on the ballot or have another avenue. And it's interesting. I mean, why does the legislature, why do elected officials have a desire to have additional avenues to send candidates to a Republican primary? Well, maybe they're worried that they're not going to get through the convention system, right? Maybe, who does, so SB 54 quickly is a mechanism by which people can get on the ballot by going and getting signatures. And the larger your area is that you're running for, the more signatures you have to get. And the lieutenant governor's office is who is going to, well, I guess depending on the race. For a state level race, lieutenant governor. For a county level race are somebody in the county. I don't remember exactly who it is, but will validate those signatures and make sure that you achieve the right number of signatures in order to get yourself on the ballot. And so we have that process in place. And who does it benefit? Well, it benefits incumbents, because incumbent has instant and immediate name recognition.
It does. So before we get too lost in mired down in this part, because I do want to do a full separate episode on these SB 54, because you're right.
Level.
Yeah, you're the high level, because it's definitely the pros and cons. I can see the pros and cons to each side, but I think we're stuck in a messy middle. I don't think the scenario that we're in right now really is helpful to either scenario, right? The solution that they proposed that this was supposed to solve. But let's get specifically to why is Governor Cox on the primary ballot if Phil got 67% of the vote?
Because Spencer Cox paid people to go get signatures. Right, like for a race.
So that's to get on the primary. It's not to just get on the general ballot.
No, it's to get on the primary.
So then, out of the primary, only
you
one
can't buy
will
your
come
way
out
onto the general. Like you have to have.
Okay.
Well, I mean, in some ways you can. If you don't have a challenger, like
right?
You get yourself straight to the general.
Yeah. Well, I guess
those people probably didn't go pay for signatures.
Okay. So
yeah.
Okay. So no matter what, coming out of the primary, we're going to only send one Republican.
Yes.
Is there ever a scenario where there's going to be two Republicans on the general election ballot? Is there a scenario like that?
I don't believe so. Now, if you change the words a little bit and you say, is there a scenario where you could have two conservatives on the general election? Then I think that certainly could be true, right? But a Republican means a member of the Republican Party.
The party is
running with the R next to their name. Right. So a conservative could run as an independent, a conservative can run as a libertarian. There's other party mechanisms that can get you in a general election.
So for the sake of argument, because out of the two, I want to hear your opinion. Why do you value one over the other, and who do you value? I'm not going to make an assumission.
In terms of,
I thought you were going to vote for Cox. I totally thought you were going to vote for.
You did not think that. Yeah, I think
he's got a great smile. He's so nice.
Those teeth are all straight.
He doesn't want to fight with anybody.
No, he doesn't want to argue. No, so I think your question is, what do I value, the convention system or SB 54?
Well, the candidates. I'm trying to get us to the candidates. Yeah.
After doing thorough vetting and talking to Phil Lyman specifically, the interesting thing, I've had people challenge me on this because when I've made statements like I talked to every single candidate across every single race, and they said, "Well, did you talk to Governor Cox?" I go, "Thank you for bringing it up. That's a great point. He's the only candidate that never made himself available to any delegates." He had booths at a lot of events where all the candidates were supposed to be, but he always only had surrogates there. Even at the Washington County Convention, he swooped in right before his speech and then flew right out of there right after. He did not want to be around delegates at all. So he does not respect the caucus delegate system.
Yeah, that's clear.
It's very clear. And, he's one of many who will actively say, "Oh, I support caucus convention. We have to keep this." But behind the scenes are actually working, or maybe not even behind the scenes, in the face of it, working to destroy it. And that can be done through several things. Most often not visibly and actively doing things against the caucus convention, but not doing things to secure it. That's even more important, right? Like, what are things in which you secure the convention system? Well, you have to make sure primary voters know the value of the caucus convention system, right? Why did these people go and do these things? You have to let them know the importance of the caucus and, hey, let's go to that meeting. And I get it. Not everybody can. Like you said, people have lives, people have families. You got a soccer game that night, like whatever it is. I get that not everybody can go, but we're not doing anything to draw more people into that process.
Right. Agreed. So, and he's an incumbent that has a voting record, right? He has a track record of making decisions. And I would probably argue that the vast majority of Utahns aren't in a painful enough situation due in their minds to the governor, right? They'll blame other individuals for whatever, situation they're in. I don't know if they're in a painful enough position to want to upset the turnip truck, from my just experience with incumbents, right? And general voter turnout. And also on the other side of this, the primary ticket is really where the race is won because in Utah, because we have one party. We have our own little uniparty.
Well, it's a strong enough party for now. I mean, we shouldn't kid ourselves. Utah is trending purple. And it won't take long after that for it to be trending blue.
Yeah, I think a bunch of the polls that I saw, RFK versus Trump, RFK wins Utah.
RFK versus Trump by itself, not RFK, Trump and Biden.
Yeah, not just taking Biden out of the survey results. If it's just Trump versus Kennedy, Kennedy wins in Utah.
I would believe it, but that's just not a realistic race, though. I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, what I'm saying is it's not a realistic race, but to your point is saying it's trending purple because enough. It's not as party loyal as it once was.
Yeah.
The middle, the flyover zone or the bell curve is going to not vote just strictly along party lines as time continues to march forward.
Yeah.
And so the Democratic base continues to grow. I think it's grown by double digits in the last...
fastest growing state in the nation for Democrats moving to.
Yeah. And so, there's probably somebody listening in here that says, well, yeah, there's a reason for that. And on the flip side, the reality is that strength of the single party is weakening over time. So if you're a Republican, acknowledging that and saying, okay, do I believe in the conservative values in the Republican platform?
Yeah.
Everybody should be taking notice because you could quickly have the rug pulled out and all of a sudden you're like, wait, how are all these people in,
Yeah. So so we're getting a little bit off track, but I love this, and hopefully we can just nail this quick and get back. But this is critically important for people to understand right now because Democrats tend to nearly 100% vote lockstep with the party, and Republicans are a much larger big tent. With a lot of diverse ideas, and a lot of people that say, well, my principles are more important than party. And so you have a set of people that, will look at it and say, well, I dislike an amount of things about this candidate and I can't vote for them. And, Ronald Reagan said, hey, I'm going to butcher the quote, but something about, my 80%, my 20% enemy is still my 80% friend. Maybe it's the other way, but you get what I'm saying. Like you can have disagreements, but when it comes, the whole purpose of a party is to join like enough minds together to vote as a block.
Right.
And I have already had this happen to me in Utah where a candidate that was not my first choice got the Republican nomination. Or even I'll actually say got the convention nomination, and I voted for that person in the primary, even though it wasn't my first choice. But and I went to my neighbors and I said, this person's not my first choice, but if we risk not all voting together for the person that came through convention, we risk having an actual Democrat win the Republican nomination, right? And you say, well, how can that happen? Well, because, and I'll be specific, right? In the last special election for CD2, we had Becky Edwards running as a Republican. Well, she's a self-proclaimed Democrat. I mean, like she and people who support her know this. And she ran with an R next to her name because that's the only way that Democrats can kind of get a foothold. Highly funded, and yet still ran as a Republican. And I was worried about Celeste and Bruce splitting the conservative vote of the Republican Party, and these fake conservatives or these Democrats that are infiltrating the Republican Party voting for Becky Edwards and pulling her above. And then we'd have Becky Edwards as the Republican nominee. And so I was actively advising people. Celeste is not my first choice last year, but we should vote for her.
Right.
Because that's the only thing you should do when it comes to the power of the party. That I hate it when people say, "Oh, well, you're just a party person then." No. The reason for a party to exist is to join like enough minds to make sure that we get a candidate through that represents enough of our viewpoints at that point in time. And elections are always about comparative basis.
And we're in a situation where the two-party system is the dominating
It's what
system.
we have.
It's a legitimate one-on-one.
We can fight amongst each other and say, "Oh, the
Where
two-party
if we
system
had
is terrible."
If we had multiple parties, you could vote along, not necessarily a party line,
it'll
but
never happen.
a block. Yeah. What I'm saying is, the point being is because it's a one-on-one battle and winner takes the seat,
right?
That if you don't vote as a block, you're going to end up risking the other party having more of their block be organized and, organized, I think is the best way to describe it. And the Democratic Party has been more organized.
They have.
They have better, as far as from my perspective, not their leadership has collected their group into a singular mission in a better way than the Republican Party has, which is something that we got to keep looking at. So Phil versus Spencer, the primary is the battle. Whoever wins the primary is probably going to win the seat.
Yeah.
You're voting for Phil.
I'll be voting for Phil Lyman.
He was the caucus convention winner. 67% of the delegates vetted and voted for him.
That's right.
Also, to not to negate it, but Cox wasn't really trying to get delegates votes.
I don't think
like
he was.
He didn't really care about it. So
Didn't show up.
Seems pretty obvious.
He knew he had signatures. He knew he'd get on the primary. He knows he has name recognition.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to lie. I think he's got the lead in polls.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing, right? I hear people and this goes to, there's human nature involved in this too. Everybody wants to be aligned with the winner. Mm-hmm. Right. And so these polls that come out, I'm always skeptical of them because you have to understand three really important things. Who's doing the polls? Who are they surveying? Mm-hmm. And what is their methodology? Too many polls to date, I might even venture to say all polls today are meant to influence and not actually report. And so people can look at it and say, "Oh, well, Cox is going to win. I want to be aligned with Cox. Cox is the only electable one. Let's vote for Cox." And I would say that that's not the right way to look for it, right? If you want Utah to stay conservative, if you want it to be red, then you should be choosing the most conservative candidate across every race. Who is going to fight to keep Utah conservative? I like using the site utahgrassroots.org. They are a website that evaluates all of our representatives across conservative bills and constitutional bills. So they don't evaluate every single bill and rack up, which one would they have chosen. They select a subset of all the bills, ones that to them represent conservative and constitutional issues. Mm-hmm. And then they rate the candidates on it. And Spencer Cox only has a 46% rating.
How do they rate them?
On bills that get passed or fail.
Yeah, but what is their methodology?
How a candidate has voted on those bills. I'm not following.
Meaning just yes or no?
Yes or no, right? So this organization says...
So they're saying this bill is conservative.
Yeah.
So if they vote yes...
That's right. They will evaluate. They will say, here's a bill. This represents a constitutional issue that's important to us. Our organization votes yes for that.
Okay.
And if you vote yes with them, you get a higher percentage. If you vote no against them, then you get a lower percentage.
So it's tough. It's tough. Not to say that this isn't a great site, but it's tough to say, okay, well, what's their methodology in deciding what bills are conservative and not conservative and what parts are conservative and not conservative?
You're right. They don't
seeing how they decide, because at a certain perspective, it's just their opinion. And
of course,
Doran Barton and David Baker. Yeah. They got their names right here. It's managed and designed by them, but the decision right? You go back to, I got to trust that the people doing this evaluation is going to be.
So that's why, I never said I lean into this 100%.
Yeah.
Right? I say
it's a good tool.
It's a data point amongst many others, like going and talking to candidates, listening to debates, listening to them talk to constituents. Many factors went into deciding. But when a lot of those other things that I mentioned often end up being subjective. Well, here's at least a number that they've used the same methodology across numerous people, right? So yes, you're right. Anyone can argue, well, why did they select these, 24 bills to measure people on? That's the methodology part. Right. But at least they applied the same 24 across all legislators. So it's something that can be used objectively to compare each other on.
That does make sense.
Right. Okay. So they apply it equally. Spencer Cox, 46%. On Utah grassroots, meaning more often than not voting against these people who feel like this is the way a constitutionalist would vote on these issues. Phil Lyman, 87%, one of the highest in all of the legislature.
But Cox doesn't vote.
No, he
Congress
decides to pass a bill or not pass a bill as the Congress does. He has to sign it into law. Right. So, for example,
is the job of the executive, though, to just flex the power of the veto, or is he saying, hey, if the legislature wants this to be passed, then I'm not going to get in the way of it?
I think both of those are true. Right. I mean, so
could it be, though, that he's taking a role of like, I might necessarily agree with all this, but the people are saying, based off the Congress, they're sending me a bill,
right?
And they are wanting me to sign this, right. And as opposed to vetoing each one.
But he does veto things.
He does.
Like he vetoed the protect women in sports bill.
My point being is it's tough to weigh these, just based off that perspective. It's tough to weigh out Phil versus him, because Phil is just a singular state legislator,
correct,
who's saying, hey, I'm going to represent my people, where Spencer Cox is sitting here as a governor representing the entire state, and he's supposed to trust that the legislature is sending him bills that is being voted on and supported by the people. Right.
But so it's interesting the way you put it that way about, Governor Cox represents the entirety of the state. Well, the sum of each of the legislators also represent the sum of this whole state. Right. And so, when the legislature passes things, that also represents the sum of the whole state. So I don't know about this, the governor sees things differently. And when a veto happens, I think, to your point, I'll give you something on your point, which is, he may have two modes, right? Okay, I don't really agree with this bill that the legislature believes, but I don't agree strong enough to veto it.
Right.
So I'll let it go through. And then there's going to be things where I disagree strong enough that I'm going to veto it. And these things could be, constitutional issues or not. And so, like, let's just talk really quickly about the boys in girls sports, right? He vetoed that bill that would keep boys from competing against girls, and keeping them out of women's safe spaces like bathrooms. He vetoed that bill. Now, luckily, our legislature had a supermajority that they were able to pass that. So this is a really interesting one, though, right? Because in this scenario, this bill came to the governor's desk for him to sign with enough support statewide that said, look, we want to protect our women. Let's pass this bill. He felt so strongly against the supermajority that he exercised his veto power and then had to be overruled. Why do that?
That's a good point.
Like this is a very strong, important issue. And yet he used his veto power. Does he always use it? Probably not, but I agree with what you're saying, that there's two modes here, that he might disagree with something and go along with it, in which case, if it's a constitutional issue, he gets credit for it on Utah grassroots.
Right.
If he goes against it, like his veto, or he goes along with something that the legislature also voted in as not constitutional, there's many bills that get passed that Phil Lyman, for example, voted, against, but enough of the state voted for. Phil Lyman held strong on the constitutional issue, and the governor signed it in.
Yeah.
Right. So that's how legislators would get a bad rating. and the governor themselves get a bad rating, where Phil would still stay on the constitutional side.
Yeah.
You can be constitutional and the bill still pass. Like majority rule doesn't necessarily mean that the majority adhered to our Constitution, state or federal.
Right.
Okay, so that's how that distinction
I think that's
happens.
a good point.
All right. Governor Cox, budget really quick. I find it funny. I find it discouraging, actually. It's not funny. It's sad that many leaders lean on how much they spend money. Hey, look, we grew our budget and look at all the good things that we did for you. Well, why are we growing the budget? Like, how about return all that money back to the people? We don't need to just keep, like, our state is growing. More taxpayers are coming in. More property taxpayers are coming in because properties are being developed. And so there's more homes, more property taxes. Here in our city of St. George, we experience the same thing with massively ballooning a budget. And the mayor stands up there and starts listing off all of the great things done with all this money. Not a single accomplishment listed as, here's the money I returned back to the people, or here's how I didn't spend your money. It's all about money came in, let's go spend that money. And this is not a fiscally conservative way of getting of governing. That's not what we should be doing. So he grew the budget from 21 billion to 29 billion, and then also provided some, what does that say, 800 million or $900 million for the development of 2 sports venues in Salt Lake City. How does this help the entire state? And there were people, even local legislators, that argue, oh, this isn't going to impact us. This is all just about local taxes. I've never seen that happen when I've seen government fund sport venues. And when you look at that, and I don't know the names off the top of my head, I've just had people explain it to me, that there's a strong friendship relationship between the governor and the recipient of all this money, which gets me to, what my high level view across all these candidates are. I'm a believer that we don't have a problem here about Republicans versus Democrats. We have a problem of America versus the establishment. What are America first principles and policies, and what is the establishment doing? Establishment cronyism is alive and strong in the state of Utah. Establishment cronyism, as I define it, is where people, elected officials, their friends, and their family all help each other out. It's this incestuous relationship between so many people that it's like, oh, this person helped me here, so I'm going to help them with public funding on this. This person helped me, so I'm going to endorse them. This person endorsed me, so I'm going to run this bill for them. This person,
but the argument though could. I think your point's taken, but I think the argument is, are we not just always trading one establishment for another?
That's candidate wise. Are we trading one establishment person versus another, or are you suggesting that we put somebody in who says they're not establishment and then they turn and become establishment?
Like to define an establishment would be a working machine, right? Yeah. The bureaucrats, the
firm, as
firm,
Senator Lee likes to put it,
right? Yeah. When you these mechanisms, these positions, these appointed or otherwise positions are moving and in an established role, meaning that they are not going away no matter who sits in the seat, no matter who is governing, that the establishment is the power holders in the private sector, but also in the bureaucratic sector that aren't elected. They're the people that stay there, right? That they're not leaving anywhere. You
certainly have unelected bureaucrats that are part of, the establishment, the deep state, the uniparty.
Right.
But those are harder to change than our elected officials. Right?
Well, almost impossible, right? So, it's almost impossible to say.
I like what Vivek wanted to do.
Well, I mean, but is that actually like a realistic thing that is actually going to happen, right?
Well,
that's
no,
like a revolution.
President,
but even if he was president, it's one thing to be zealous about this thing and have this great idea, but in practice, what are the second and third unintended consequences that might have, where the vast majority of people are like, it's too much, right? We slowly got to this position, and in order for us to right the ship, there's no big jerks that are going to really actually impact us in the way that we really want it to, because that's when that's essentially a revolution. So before we get too far down in the establishment,
let's get back.
What my thought is we're going to trade one establishment for another, and the best way that we can continue to battle that is to vote for elected people that are willing to stand in the face of something they disagree with, no matter what the consequences are. And I think Phil, partly him getting arrested as with the Bureau of Land Management fighting the federal government in their overreach in Bears Ears, I think is a great example of him saying, consequences be damned.
Yeah.
I'm going to stand up for what I believe in.
And stand up for the people I represent.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
And I think he's a smart guy.
Consequence to himself. He stood up for the people that he represents.
He's capable. He's smart. He is definitely principled.
For sure.
Has shown that he can stand up for what he believes in, and he's not going to back down from the fight. I think he is a great replacement. Going back to, he doesn't have a whole lot of name recognition. He's from Blanding, Utah. He's not. He hasn't established himself, in the power halls of Salt Lake City like Governor Cox has. So it'll be an interesting race. I'm hopeful for
on immigration. He's stronger. He wants to do things in Utah to keep.
Yeah, the immigration thing is such this weird.
Governor
narrative.
Cox allows people to fly, illegal immigrants to fly into Salt Lake, and then lets them just roam around the state.
There's so many instances with Cox where it seems so obvious to me. I'm like, why would we continue to want? He has done some good things. Yes, there's no argument there with me.
He's not 0% conservative, right? He achieved 46% conservative. So at no point am I saying he hasn't done conservative things.
There's just but
he's not conservative enough.
Some glaring holes of things that he's done. Yeah. Where if you're a voter and you're just ignoring those things for some of the good things he's done, I think that misinformed piece of it is going to hurt us.
I just want to give a quick thing on immigration, illegal immigration in the state of Utah. I'll do two things. I had an elected official recently giving me a stat that he had seen that there are 2 to 3 rapes in the state of Utah per day. Oof. Half of those are done by illegal immigrants. That's the impact of the number of illegal immigrants that are in this state. Governor Cox wants to say we are not a sanctuary state for illegal immigrants. I don't care what somebody says. It's what people do that matter. We allow illegal immigrants to get a driver's license in the state of Utah. They call it a driver's privilege card, but same thing. You can drive. They allow the
euphemisms.
I know. So I just wanted nobody to fact check me on it and say, no, they can't get a driver's license, right? Okay, it's called a driver's privilege card. Okay. We give the children of illegal immigrants free health insurance. I'm not saying free health care, right? Mm-hmm. So if they're sick, they can go to the doctor and they get free health insurance. No, tell me a U.S. citizen that gets free health insurance, right? Nobody. Right. But we give the children of illegal immigrants free health insurance. We give illegal immigrant students who come into this state and want to go to school here in-state tuition. If you come here from Arizona and you're a U.S. citizen from Arizona, you cannot get in-state tuition.
Right.
And the worst and biggest one of them, this is a huge failure of our legislature for not understanding what this is doing. They recently passed a bill that changed E-Verify requirements. E-Verify is what employers are supposed to do to make sure that you are a U.S. citizen and other things. They passed a bill to increase from 15 to 150 as the minimum employees needed before you go do E-Verify. So it used to be 15. They increased it to 150. You want to take a guess at how many businesses in the state of Utah are over 150?
How many? The total number of businesses?
Yeah.
56,285.
That's amazingly close. It is unbelievable how close you are. It is close to 90% of the businesses that are under 150 employees.
Oh, okay. Sweet. I was close.
You were really close.
Super close.
Yeah. And so almost anyone can hire an illegal immigrant in this state.
Yeah.
So you can drive here, you can work here, you can get health insurance here. You can go to school
here. The kids can. Which is incentive for parents to say, I'm going to bring my kids there because they can get something that they can't get
somewhere
else.
So there really are not incentives for them not to come here. They can be flown here for free. That's part of the federal government gives them a free airplane ticket anywhere they want to go.
Right.
But nobody is sitting at the airport arresting anybody
because they can't.
Because when they do, then because
The only person that would be able to do that would be ICE officers, and they're instructed not to.
And they're instructed not to. No, we can arrest people, but then what happens is we
not
put them
based on being illegal. I don't think they can arrest them for being illegal.
No, we can.
Okay.
But what happens is, because the federal government has put such a high bar
of the detainment
in jails, like you have to have this might be not the right example, but in this genre, you have to have hand lotion available for these prisoners. So our jails don't meet the requirements of what the federal government says. So we have to turn around and let them go.
Right.
So we can't hold them, so we don't bother arresting them.
Yeah.
So we can't. So yeah. So
we've gone down a rabbit trail.
Yeah. Okay. So and I don't know. We have a bunch of things that we want to talk about. So I'll move on this, but sounds like, I know I'm in favor of Phil Lyman. He's a stronger conservative, and I don't know why, as Republicans, we don't want the strongest conservatives that we can have representing our conservative needs.
Especially while the Republican Party is going to, the one who wins in the primary is very, 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 very likely, like 99% chance that they will actually be elected as the governor. Well, so if you're a Republican, showing up for this primary is super important. And if you're going to elect the best candidate based off the party platform, if you call yourself a Republican for a specific reason and those principles, so you had a list there. So border security, we're not doing well as far as the executive protecting Utah borders on the illegal immigration. Budget, I would agree with you. We have done a lot. We have a lot of economic prosperity, but is that in spite of the governor and the government?
Exactly.
I would say that is highly likely. Traditional values of voting record. What else you got there? The immigration.
Yeah, I think we covered them all. The bathroom policy.
Policy. Yeah. So where he stands, and that one's a nuanced position. That one's tough. I can see how we've muddied that water so much.
I hate that word. I hate that word nuanced. People say this to try to say that there's some way of rationalizing it.
Yeah, because I'm against the government telling us to do anything. And so whether you're saying like forcing someone they have to do this, like when the government says you have to do this or face the consequence, I don't want that. I don't care whether it's a conservative principle or not. But do you see what I'm saying?
This is the opposite of this. This is saying a man cannot go into a women's bathroom. So it's not telling a man that they must do something. It's saying they cannot go into women's spaces, right? We do all kinds of laws that tell people what they can't do. We tell parents they cannot abuse their children. Right. We will never go back and say,
I'm saying the gender conversation in general, like the general gender conversation, we've made this so difficult to navigate around that even though we agree, we can be disagreeing. Does that make sense? That there's so many different small scenarios where you get outside of the child conversation, right? So we have to draw these lines for children, and then we try and draw these lines for adults, and then like what's allowed for adults and what's not allowed for adults, and they're always hitting us with all these different angles. It is very frustrating to me to have the gender conversation, because I feel like I just want to go back into like the old world where everybody just realized like, oh, that's a man and that's a woman, and it's so just culturally just so accepted that we didn't have to write it down on a piece of paper.
I think there is a principle that it's simpler than that, right? I believe people have the right to do
what I'm saying is the government's not making it simple.
No, but I still disagree. Well, I will agree with that in general. I will agree with that in general, that government doesn't make things simple. But I think there's a general principle that we could agree on, which is I'm in favor of people being allowed to do what they want to do right up to that line where it infringes in somebody else's rights.
Okay, fair enough.
Right?
Yeah.
Like agreed. That's like I'm not saying a person can't do what they want to do. But if you want to do what you want to do and then you want to make somebody else unsafe because of that, you've now crossed a line.
Agreed.
Okay.
I agree with you there.
That I think is a principle that we can live by.
Right.
All right.
So when they write these bills, that's what I'm saying, is they write these bills that are not just super simple and like obvious. They throw in these like little tiny little pieces that are like, oh, well, and this is the the driver's license thing, right? It's like we just twist these little tiny things. It's the devil. This is the devil done this since Adam and Eve, right? So that's this. When I'm talking about the nuance, I'm talking about the nuances of these bills that come through that offer up this argument, and then it makes us.
There's one or two. I had two, and then all of a sudden I lost it. So I'm going to go back to one. There's one really strong reason why that is. And I think we talked about this last time. Was when you write a bill, if it's so vague, like you can do what you want to do until you cross into somebody else's rights, it's too vague. And now you can't enforce it. And then the police are sitting there going like, well, how do I interpret this? And I might interpret it differently than some other sheriff. So they have to start getting into specifics about, okay, this is what we mean by this, and this is this, and this is this, and here's the consequence for these things. If they don't do that, then we end up with bills that are so vague that I think you compound this problem, because then you have unequal implementation of the law.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay.
Let's go to the next one.
All right. The next one would be U.S. Senate. All right. So
U.S. Senate. This is a tough one because there's four.
There's four now, right? So
four.
going back to your point about, convention winner and how do other people get on the ballot. So in this race, this is a great race because we had one candidate come out of convention as a true winner, meaning they achieved a high enough percentage. Everybody else didn't get enough percentage, but there were three candidates that went and bought signatures to get themselves on the ballot. Again, to be able to do that, you have to either be super rich, that you're affording it on your own without donations, or be an incumbent, in which incumbents have a built-in mechanism to get more donations because they believe, big donors believe, oh, this person already has a track record of taking care of the people who have given them donations. I mean,
Right.
this is just the bottom line of what most candidates, most elected officials have to do, right? Like it costs money to run. And unfortunately, it means that they have to trade favors for donations. I don't like it, and I want to minimize that. And one way that I look at minimizing that is what Trent Staggs has done. Trent Staggs has I'm a geek when it comes to some of these numbers.
So real quick, the four candidates that are running
let's name them.
for U.S. Senate.
Yeah.
Trent Staggs, John Curtis,
right.
current congressional District 3.
That's right. U.S. House. Yes.
U.S. House, I believe District 3.
Yeah.
John Curtis, Jason Walton, and a former Speaker of the Utah State Legislature, House of Representatives, Brad Wilson.
That's right.
Okay, so you have two guys that have been in a legislative seat previously. Trent Staggs was a former mayor or current mayor of Riverton. And then Jason Walton, I've just been told, is a billionaire. It's like how somebody's like, yeah, he's like a business guy.
A pest control business guy.
Pest control billionaire.
Yeah. No, but I like it. I mean, if you're going to send anybody to the Senate, I want somebody who knows how to kill bugs. Like,
I mean, yeah, you can't argue with that. And I've interviewed all three of these guys. So if you've listened to previous episodes, I think we have a lot of opportunity to learn from all these guys except for Walton. But he came in late to the race. There's an argument for the signatures.
And if he would have promised to take insecticide to the Senate, I might have been more. Yeah, I might have been like, okay, I'm all for this guy. But he didn't.
But Trent won with how much percent at the convention?
Do I have that here? It is.
He got a pretty good group. He just didn't get over the 60.
No. His is over 60%.
He got over 60. There we go.
So he hit the threshold. That's why there's only one person that came out of convention.
That's right. Okay.
Right. So if he didn't,
the other three guys had to gather signatures, or they wouldn't be on the primary.
Or they wouldn't be on it.
So all the delegates, they interviewed most of these guys. I didn't talk to Jason. Truthfully, I couldn't get a hold of Jason. I made several attempts to get a hold of Jason. I couldn't get a hold of him, and he got into the race late. Lots of reasons, right, for that to be said, but Trent went through this delegation process and he made himself available, very available from my perspective.
Yes.
And
even in Southern Utah.
Yeah.
Right.
All over the state.
Where he's already has strong support here, but he still kept coming down.
He started in the race early. He was the first sign. I saw a sign back in 23, like early 23, that he was running. There was a sign in Bloomington.
Yeah. So not only early, but he's the first candidate to announce and challenge Mitt Romney. So everybody else came in after Mitt Romney announced that he wasn't going to run. He was the only one that announced that he was going to run. Brad Wilson announced an exploratory committee before Mitt Romney announced that he wasn't going to run. And Brad Wilson said, I'm going to wait to see what Mitt Romney does before I make a final decision.
Right.
So he literally gave a nod to the establishment. And I think we all know very well how popular Mitt Romney is in this state, and it's not very popular at all.
And it's been that way since the second he got elected into it was like a year into the Trump presidency that he started voting,
showing his true colors.
Exactly. It was almost immediately upon getting elected that he no longer was a Republican, at least from my perspective, because I remember when he ran for president, he said a lot of the right things. It seemed like he had a lot of the right vision and goals, and alignment with the Republican Party was there.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, 2017 hit, and then all of a sudden it was like a different guy, which is really weird.
Republican go?
Exactly. And so Brad Wilson kind of had that, hey, I'm going to take your seat. I'm going to fill right in for you, right? Give me a high five, and then I'll slide in here. So he did the exploratory, and Trent was with his bullhorn on the milk soapbox, saying, hey, we need changes here. And I
believe, this is just a tickle in my head so I can be fact checked on this, but I believe Mitt Romney endorsed Brad Wilson.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. So then we got John Curtis, Jason Walton, Brad Wilson, Trent Staggs, the convention winner. From your perspective, maybe give me a rundown, what was the one con? Was there anything with Trent that you felt like, hey, this was something that I felt like is not playing to his favor, or this is what the other candidates are going to say against him?
Okay, well, sure.
Maybe just play like the
devil's advocate thing. Let me get to that after one quick stat, right? Because I spent a lot of time on the money side.
Okay.
Like I went, I go and download like hundreds of thousands of records off FEC, Federal Election Commission's website about where all the money is coming from. And I go and analyze and look at it. And one of the things that is very telling to me is Trent Staggs, for donors that gave under $500. So, like $500 is still a lot of money for almost all Utahns, but that's the number I chose for like, hey, this might be a achievable number for many, and above 500 is well beyond achievable. Yeah. So $500 where I drew my line. Trent Staggs has 27% of his donations of under $500. John Curtis, 2%.
Right.
Brad Wilson, 1%. Jason Walton, 6%.
Yeah.
So these are all people that, and so take those numbers and invert them for above $500. I don't need to do the math for people that, a vast majority of their funding coming from very rich donors.
I'd be curious what the $1,000 mark was, because when I was looking at
you want me to move that bar?
I'd be curious about it. I think to your point is saying, is there a lot of people that might not have a whole lot of money to spend, or the argument in my mind is you're getting a lot of donations at a smaller number means the people that don't have the means are the ones that are selecting you, versus like let's say Jason Walton, where he's got a lot of those, but at the same time, he hasn't spent as much time talking to those people that only have, $100 or $500 to donate. And he's spending his majority of his time talking to the ones that have money, right? It's tough when measuring by money. It's hard for me to gauge that. Like, are they buying the seat when ultimately they need the money to win the seat, right? Like Trent Staggs, like right now, the most I've heard, especially from delegates, is like, we need some money so that we can get our message out, right?
That's
It's like
he's the least funded of the candidates, right? Because he appeals to.
So if he was funded as much as everybody else, then how do we differentiate them, right?
Well,
that's what I'm saying.
But what if this percentage didn't move so much? Right, like what if he had an equal amount of money, but the percentage was still greater than 20% from grassroots numbers, right? Like from low donors, right? That would be still fairly meaningful, right?
I don't know. I don't know if I buy into grassroots, meaning that's the best. Like those people were the best ones to decide who is the best candidate. Like, are they the most educated? Okay. Are they the most qualified individuals because they don't have a lot of money to decide which one of them is the best?
No, so I would look at it a little bit differently than about how much money does a person have, and correlate that to their intelligence or knowledge of all the candidates. I would look at it more like which candidates are drawing in the very rich, who those people are not going to just give money for nothing back, right? Like these people are like, hey, I know that if I give $30,000 to John Curtis, I'm going to be able to make a phone call, right? And what if
that person's worth $1 billion? $30,000 is like 10 cents.
I agree.
Right. So,
yeah.
So like, is $30,000 worth of value to that person, meaning that he's going to be able to call up John and get whatever he wants?
That's
probably not.
No, probably so. Because that John received $30,000 versus getting $15 from somebody else, right? Like what I agree with you on the percentage of what a person is worth is how painful it is to that person to give. Right. That's a different algorithm, right? That's a different equation. The equation that matters to a candidate or an elected official is, who are my largest donors? Mm-hmm. That's what matters to them. And so it doesn't matter if, Bill Gates gave $500,000 to somebody, that means it's meaningless to him, right? $500,000 to him is like nothing, right? Yeah. So it's meaningless to him, but to somebody else, $500,000, like that's huge. I'm going to be giving Bill a phone call back. Right? Like that's how that money is worthwhile to somebody else, that to them, if it's a quarter of their budget, of their campaign budget, mm-hmm. that's meaningful.
I get that.
Okay.
So I guess my thought still is, by using money as the basis to decide, especially if it's the grassroots, the pro to that in my mind is Trent has gotten to the everyday neighborhood human, and gotten to them. He's spoke to the biggest swath of people that he possibly could, and he's taken the time to reach them and not spent that flip side amount of time talking to the ones with the most amount of money. So where are his loyalties lying? They're lying to the everyday man at a 27%, right? I guess, versus spending my time going to these other big donors. Now, I think potentially if I was to if I'm thinking about where the money is, my mind immediately goes, I want to know how much money the big donors are giving them, and then who are those people?
Great.
That to me, like if I'm looking at money, it's less important to me how many did he get from the grassroots, because I'm like, okay, I appreciate that. That's great. And what if the 80% of the rest of the money is from two massive donors to Trent?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It certainly does. And I have a data point that I think addresses that to a degree.
Because to the point, you were talking about who gave John Curtis money.
Yeah.
And he has a massive portion of that money coming from like one or two organizations,
one or two PACs.
Yeah.
$2 million.
So
$2 million
is more interesting and like,
from out of state PACs.
From out of state PACs.
Yeah. One of them is named DC? In-state. One of them, but they're out of state.
A DC firm is one, right? Because he's been part of the House of Representatives, right?
He's
spent time there, right? And he's towed the line at some perspective in order to win money from them.
Yes.
And who are they? Well, I don't know.
Well, and that's the thing with PACs, right? And that's why they call
the dark hole of
dark money PACs. They call them that for a reason, because you can't actually trace back where this money is coming from. So people are able to then say, oh, I can give to this PAC. They're never going to find out it was from me. Right. And so I can go do these things and actually influence the election.
Now accountability is almost impossible, right? Like,
well, luckily the FEC tells us some of this, right? Like they tell you who got PAC money. And that's how I know that John Curtis got $2 million in PAC money that's untraceable. Except for the name of the PAC. Yeah, it's a huge amount of money. One thing that you said earlier about, I'm not using this money equation as the sole basis for a decision.
Fair enough.
It again is one factor in the overall story. Mm-hmm. So I agree with you. This is not a, Trent appeals to the mass, more people and lower donors, so therefore he's the guy, right? This is one of the factors. Trent is firmly in the America First space. He is in that lane of America First. Unfortunately, we have some Republicans that think America First is a bad word, and I don't understand it, frankly. A lot of them argue, well, America First means we don't care about anybody else. No. look, it's in the name itself, America First. That means there is a second, a third, a fourth. It doesn't mean America only, right? You want to conflate America First to mean America only, and that's not the words. The words are America First. As soon as we take care of ourselves, then of course there is money to be had in other parts of the world that also secures our interests, as per always, right? But why? Well, I'll get to that point a little bit later. So
it's interesting because this whole that movement, America First.
Yeah,
we go through waves of nationalism in almost every government, in almost every civilization, going back as far as time is. Right. So like this conversation is ubiquitous with government and governance and citizens versus the elected officials and the power, the powers that be. So it is fascinating because I'm thinking about it from different windows of time, right?
Yeah.
And they all mean different things.
Yeah.
And so it is funny. I completely agree with you. Is that I don't know if there's a big portion of the Republican Party that think it's a bad word, but I think it's a portion of the conservative side of the populace that don't align with Donald Trump. I think is what it is. They don't align with Donald Trump. And then so that is like almost poisoning that whole, I guess the broader understanding of what that means.
I think there's truth to that. I spoke to somebody yesterday, the day before, yesterday, for 40 minutes, who was using America First as a bad name. And he referred to these people as, they're just being loud and obnoxious. And I don't know why we can't go to the way, we used to all agree before. And now these people are here. Well, they see it that way because America First is truly ascendant. It is rising and it has the momentum. And frankly, the old way of doing things, these people are scared. They're scared about the investment that they've made over their lives into backing candidates that support establishment cronyism. And they've all been a part of it. They've all been a part of putting their names behind certain candidates in order to be able to make a phone call. I talked to so many people that are like, I'm able to call this candidate and the answer is my phone call. So I'm going to be voting for him. I'm like, okay, that sounds great. That's great for you.
It's true.
But what about all the rest of the people?
So let's get because we're off. I just realized we're at 12 o'clock. We're an hour in. So and we got Phil Lyman and Spencer Cox down. So we got.
Wait, you mean our conversation is going to go
this
long?
Is so good.
How is this happening?
This is a good conversation, and I want to make sure people are listening. They're like, I'm going to get value out of listening to the time.
So Trent Staggs, limited government, fiscal responsibility, energy independence, strong border policies, and strong endorsements amongst all of the America First personalities: Trump, Kash Patel, Charlie Kirk, Senator Tommy Tuberville, Rick Grinnell, Moms for America, Carrie Lake.
He's got a lot of endorsements.
The police, Fraternal Order of Police.
Yep, Fraternal Order of Police.
And I don't know, did I answer your question? You said, some negative things.
Well, yeah, like the opposition, you're going to hear the opposition say, okay, why not Trent Staggs? And I think one of them lands in the police conversation. You're going to probably hear this one.
Yes.
Right, where he was ordering vaccines for...
No. So the negative campaigning that went on for this was that...
So far, too. I mean, there's potential for more.
Oh, well, they're going to repeat the same negative campaigning that they did to delegates. They were previously targeted to delegates. We all got tons of text messages about this negative campaigning. They're now going to repeat those same talking points to the general population for the primary. Their claim is that he ordered DEI training to the police force. And the facts don't support it. He's talked about this, and the police chief in Riverton has said this isn't true. So
and going back to this are we going to be single issue voters? Are we going to say let's just assume let's just say okay, well maybe he did. Okay, let's say we have this one.
True, but
it's not true, and even if he did, does that say I shouldn't vote for him versus all of these other the comparisons between him and all these other candidates,
right?
And the fact that it's not true to me sounds like that's such a low bar. Like they don't have a whole lot of things to say. Well, they're resorting to I got to make it up.
They got to make it up or use half truths, right? Like he did direct and certain trainings, but to call it DEI is not true.
Yeah.
It was around police tactics, right? Like this was at the height of like some of the police brutality type things.
Mm-hmm.
And so they wanted to bring in some specialty training around tactics of handling people, suspected criminals.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to call them yet criminals, but okay. So allegedly,
allegedly,
our favorite word. And why they would use that and why they would make these things up is to try to create a theme around, Trent Staggs is fake America First, right? Like they will try to brand him as, he says he's America First and he says he stands for these things, but look at these couple of things, like these don't add up. But he did in fact fight against the governor's mask mandates on children. So our governor pushed mask mandates to kids in school during COVID. Vaccine mandates. He fought against all of these things in his city, and stood up against the governor on these things. So
I would say if as far as it's clear to me who the best candidate to be a senator is, because there's only 100 of them, right? And so if you're wanting a moderate individual in any elected position, a great position for that would be like the House of Representatives, because your set of representing is just a portion of it. Now, if you feel like if you believe you're a strong conservative Republican and you want the biggest bang for your buck as far as a voice in Congress, having two strong conservatives as a Utah delegation, having Mike Lee and having somebody stand next to him that's in alignment with Mike Lee.
That's right.
Trent Staggs is the clear winner. The clear winner
across
and
these.
And I just because I don't know enough about Jason to say that he couldn't also do that, but John Curtis for sure is gonna be a moderate. He's
definitely a moderate. He's not right on the border. I went to a very intimate lunch with him and asked him about the border, and I was very respectful because it was a very small lunch.
I will say he knows his wheelhouse, and then there's a bunch of issues that he has some gaps.
Yeah.
Like he knows he's like really strong on a couple of these things that he really, really believes in. And then these other ones, he kind of, and I would say the same thing is true for Brad every time I've talked to him. Like when you talk about like a special like budget and like fiscal conservative, like his opinion on the budget and how we're going to get out of $34 trillion in deficit. He does not have an answer. I've gone to bunches of meet and greets. I've talked to him one-on-one about it on this podcast. He doesn't want to give his opinion on it. So if you're not willing to give your opinion on it, as a senator, as a
person running for it, like, and then how can we know what you're going to?
How can we know? We just can't know. It's too. So
I feel the same way. Every discussion I had with him, either directly or
he's a great politician.
He's a great politician.
And I would say the same thing about John too. I think he's masterful at playing the game.
Yes,
I think he's masterful, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way.
I do.
Which is fine because I get that there would be times if I'm going to say my opinion and not try to put myself in their shoes, that I'd for sure make mistakes and I'd for sure not land probably exactly where my constituents would want me to land. I think he's playing the game multiple steps ahead.
But I will take genuine over fake politician every single time. Tell me how you feel.
He seems
and I might
genuine.
So I've disagreed with Trent on things. I've pushed him on hard questions. I do this with everybody. I ask people very tough questions.
It's my favorite part about you.
And corner them. Yeah. Right. And keep pushing until I find their limit.
Right.
And there's some things that I have disagreed with Trent on. But it's not enough to outweigh the fakeness of John Curtis and Brad Wilson. And I'll tell you, props to Jason. I do believe he's an America First candidate. I think that's where his policies are. I think he didn't get into the race early enough. He didn't do the work to go and get a grassroots amount of support. And I hope that he doesn't, split the very conservative vote in this race. But policy wise, I think he's more right than wrong. Where I think John and Brad are more wrong than right. And then Trent is our strongest candidate. He's right on all the policies, enough of them, and he's grassroots, and he's got the support of broad America First nationwide characters.
Yeah.
Which I think is important.
Yeah.
And of course, if I didn't mention, did I mention Trump? He has Trump's endorsement.
Oh yeah,
as well.
He got that right at the convention, right?
Right before the convention. So that's a huge one. And then Vivek Ramaswamy just came on board. Oh, and the today one was Ron Paul. Ron Paul,
oh, interesting.
Endorsed him. So how is that for the breadth of Republican and conservative voices, right? I mean, like Ron Paul is way closer to libertarian side of the conservativeness, and he's pulled him along with him as well. So
this is something I think is key, because I've heard this before. Somebody says, well, they don't have experience. Well, I think in his ability to garner support from a lot of this broad base of already elected officials is showing that he's willing to go to the neighbor and knock on the door and talk to as many of the everyday Utahn as he can. And he's also willing to go at the highest levels and do everything that he can to win over their opinion.
That's right.
Now, did Ron Paul vet all of these candidates to say, is he the best one out of, the four of them? Probably not.
Yeah. It's hard to know. Yeah. I have some data on that for later.
However, the reality is that he is operating under the assumption that he's won the position and he wants to hit the ground running. From what I can see is that he knows what he wants and he's going after it. And that's kind of a somebody as a leader, especially in a Senate seat. It's such an important role, in my opinion.
It really is.
You need somebody that's willing out there to go and bang the trash cans and get as loud as he can. And he's done a good job of that.
We have to call an end to these conservatives that are squishy. It's time for fighters. We have to sit back and say...
That's funny. Colby called Mike Lee his squishy. I'm not going to get into that, but that was funny.
He said squish, meaning that he would bump up against him.
I know. Just the squish, the word squish. Yeah, we need somebody that can stand firm on what they believe in. And in this role, I get that the decisions sometimes have to be made because you're trading one thing for another. I'm not naive enough to say in a negotiation in some bills, are there times where we're going to have to trade something for something else for the future? That's the reality of politics. That's the reality of politics. And I know you disagree with me on this.
No, I agree that there's a reality of it, but I'll use slightly different words. I think there's a difference between negotiating and compromising. And I feel like we should negotiate while not compromising on our constitutional basis. We have to stay on constitutionally focused.
I get that.
So I won't take candidates that compromise on the Constitution.
Okay, so far
negotiate.
Let's keep rolling. So far we got Phil Lyman and Governor Cox. We got Trent Staggs over John, Jason, and Brad on the Senate seat.
That's right.
I think John's going to give him the biggest run.
I believe that's true.
I think that he's
got a lot of money, and he's got support of very rich people.
Yeah,
very rich people.
So does Brad, but Brad. I don't think Brad's got it.
I mean, I'm not one to believe polls, but the polls are showing that Brad is low.
That he's low. Yeah, polls, especially statewide.
I don't like him.
What are we going to go to next? I think we should go to House District 2.
Exactly.
Local. Let's get Southern Utah.
Yes.
House District 2.
Right.
I like Celeste Malloy. I like her. I think she's smart. I think she's passionate. I think she believes that she's doing the best job that she can do. And in my opinion, and this is something I would tell her and I will tell her, it's not good enough.
It's not enough.
It's not enough.
Right.
Yeah, because I think in a different, potentially with a different circle around her, she'd be making better choices. But I think she's being influenced by other people outside of. I don't think she's landing on her own. And I would love to have her talk to me about this specifically. And this is honestly as I'm talking, I'm thinking it out as I'm talking it. So bear with me.
Sure.
Everybody, bear with me.
Sure.
I think that she even might not be even think that she's being influenced by them, but I don't think she's making those decisions based off of her own calculations of moving forward because of the role that she filled with Stewart. She was a team player with Stewart.
Yeah.
She was there she had a she wants to be a part of a group. She wants to be a part of a coalition, and I think she's aligned herself with not the right coalition of people. She's made some really bad votes.
Really bad votes, but I disagree with you on the calculating part. I think this is calculated. I think her views are, if I align myself with Speaker Johnson, then I will get his support, and that will be a way in which I can move my career forward. Right? This is how this is calculated. Right? Like, she is choosing to be a team player, just like you said. Right? She was a team player on. I'm drawing a blank now. Congressman Stewart. Thank you, Chris. I wasn't here, so I have no direct experience.
I know your opinion doesn't cover anything. You're not from Utah.
It doesn't count.
Just kidding.
Well,
I'm kidding.
No. There are some people that would certainly say that. Anyway, that for a different time. I think it's calculated. I think she was selected by Stewart to take her place, take his place, and she's continuing to be selected by sticking with the party. Now, she went off. This is amazing. She actually said the quiet part out loud, right? She went on, the Deseret had an article, about this, like when Mike Lee decided to endorse Colby Jenkins after a thorough, vetting process, right? Like there are some endorsements that come without thorough, like you mentioned, you doubt that
Ron Paul's,
is going to talk to all the other candidates. Probably not.
Yeah.
But Mike Lee, the default would have been, well, let's support the incumbent. But he did a thorough vetting process.
And Mike Lee should, because he's part of the Utah delegation. Like, in my opinion, like, when your endorsements are coming from somewhere outside of the state, I can see how you're like getting endorsements because somebody talks to you enough and says, hey, I agree with what you say.
Well, Jim Jordan, right, of Ohio, endorsed Celeste Malloy. Never talked to Colby Jenkins.
Right. But is it really his requirement to do that? I don't know if that necessarily makes me change my opinion. But what he's saying is that from the experience he's had with Celeste, he thinks she's doing a good job. Right. That when I hear an endorsement from somebody that doesn't have a horse in the race, him saying that doesn't hurt him. There's nothing where Mike Lee. I hope him saying it to Colby, like he even said it in the meeting yesterday. Yeah. He's like, I haven't been.
It took courage.
It hasn't been popular.
It took courage to do it.
I haven't made a whole lot of friends that way by going up against an already elected.
But Celeste said the quiet part out loud, which was, this caught her by surprise. I'm paraphrasing. I have the quotes here. I could read, but I think for time's sake, this caught me by surprise because I expected our Utah delegation to stick together. Right, I wasn't expecting Utah on Utah Republican on Republican backstabbing. So her and John Curtis split on several big votes, where John voted against, especially the appropriation bill, the first Ukraine bill. Mm-hmm. John Curtis voted against it, and she voted for it. Right, and so she even didn't fall within her own delegation, which is just funny to me. It's like, well, why would you say that if you yourself haven't voted? I suspect they feel like they have more latitude on differences in voting versus differences in supporting. Fair enough. Like all of these elected officials all stand with each other. Like Celeste has the endorsements of almost all of our local elected state representatives. Right. I'll say almost all, because I went and double checked myself earlier. I said it was all, and I double checked myself. There's one who hasn't endorsed her locally. It's
team spirit, man. Like, everybody's on the same team.
That's exactly what they want. That's why the establishment stays in power, and that's why they are scared about America First grassroots candidates getting a foothold, and they want to step on the necks of those people, and it's time that we step on the necks of the establishment. We have to push it to the ground and step on its neck. Otherwise, we are losing the state and frankly losing the Republican Party. We will fracture, I fear, unless we get in line with America First ascendancy.
Okay, the main thing that I'm going to say, if you call yourself a Republican, and this is coming out of lots of different angles, but FISA, the Foreign Intelligence Services Act, and warrantless searches
on American citizens. That's right.
Was finally up for a vote. An amendment, right, for them to change this. This was our opportunity to do it. She ran on this platform. She said she wanted to fix it. They didn't fix it. Well, she voted for it with the warrant requirement. And then when the warrant requirement was removed and it was replaced with some like arbitrary oversight, and after the fact we can go back and check this sleight of hand is probably the best way I could describe it.
Right.
She voted for it anyway.
She voted for it, even though it still included warrantless searches of American citizens. And here's the thing. At one of the debates, this question specifically came up. And luckily, somebody in the audience asked this specific question. Will you vote for an omnibus bill or any bill that includes warrantless searches on American citizens? She said, I won't support it. We have her own words pre-vote where she told us face to face she wasn't going to support it. And then she went and did.
And whether or not this was a negotiation, right? This goes back to your negotiation versus compromising a constitutional.
She rationalizes her compromising.
We are going to continue to lose freedoms one step at a time if we allow the federal government to take these small little things, twist them up, and package them in some pill that we can take. Mm-hmm. And as the elected official, the lawyer, the person who's supposed to be there to protect the person that doesn't have the time because they're just trying to get through the day and the weeks and make the money that they can make. I expected her to look out for those people. She didn't do that.
And for people who don't know, right, they may think, well, how often is the government doing this? This can't be a big deal. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of these warrantless searches that are happening. I mean, I forget the number off the top of my head, but it's a staggering number of number of searches that are happening, on a per day basis. A staggering number. This happens all the time.
And it's the history of it too. On top of it is the fact that we have a opportunity to right a wrong, and we're not righting that wrong. And if you can't right a wrong on really just the smallest detail of an actual constitutional requirement,
and she rationalizes it. She goes back and says,
I get it. That's fine.
I did it because it included this, and we got this win, and we got this base hit. But when you step off your constitutional platform, it's still an out. Right, you cannot, and
I can get a base hit and not score a run and still lose the game.
Exactly. Well, there's that, but what she doesn't describe when she says the analogy of I'm in favor of getting base hits. She doesn't account for the fact that her pitcher is giving up home runs. Right, like it's not gonna matter if you get base hits if you're giving up home runs when you're on the other side. This notion of, let's not argue over the tactics. I'm trying to get little things done. The tactics do matter. And that's ultimately why Senator Lee went and backed Colby against all history. I don't believe there's been a time. I think they have said this, so I take their word for it, that there hasn't been a time where a sitting senator didn't endorsed a challenger. In a race.
But for the sake of time, I've interviewed both Colby and Celeste.
Yeah.
You can go back. You can listen to those discussions. I think understanding who Colby is in that episode, you will for sure get a full idea and a full picture of who he is in that moment. But he has lots of endorsements, lots of accolades. He for sure is qualified and definitely has the fortitude to uphold especially the constitutional minimums of the requirement of the job. And I think Celeste is invalidated because of that. She fell short just off that alone.
Yeah.
You're
super quick on just a few other things that were in that omnibus package, right? So $400,000 for transition clothing for trans minors in Wisconsin, right? Again, the minors thing is our hard line. $2 million for equipment to facilities performing late-term abortions. $500 million to the country of Jordan to secure their border, yet no money to secure our own border. They like to argue that, we did give money to the Border Patrol. That's not securing our border. That's just enabling the Border Patrol to house more illegal immigrants as they come across. That's not helping us. That's not stopping the flow of illegal immigrants. Since Joe Biden took office, it's 11 million illegal immigrants that have come into this country, and we're not stopping that flow.
Yep. I think the budget, it's out of the control. It's truthfully out of the control of a single congressperson. Okay. The budget.
Another data point on money, because I went and looked all over FEC. Celeste has $90,000 in donations from the states from Virginia and DC.
Yeah, from establishment.
From establishment, right? PACs. Colby only got $5,000 from those two
Which
locations.
makes sense, though, because he's the challenger. He doesn't know any of those people. Now, next election, it'd be interesting to see.
It will be interesting to see where the money comes from.
He might be getting money from those.
Right.
And this goes back to...
And we'll hold him accountable.
I have a hard time saying that the money is specifically going to help me make a determination, because there's so many ways to slice that up. And who those people are is very difficult to identify, and influence can happen in a lot of different ways, and favors can be traded in a lot of different ways.
I agree.
And
but
so
money is a big factor.
Money's a big factor.
I mean,
and
let's not
for an
discount
incumbent voting on when you have a track record, when you're voting specifically, we have to expect it's not what they are saying.
That's right.
In this moment, in the election season, it's not what they're saying. It's how did they vote along the way so far. And in that congressional district 2 seat,
right.
I'm ready for another option. Let's go for another
I'm ready
option.
for Colby. Let me read one Mike Lee quote on Colby, just because, it's important to talk about the incumbent and what they've done or not done, but just something positive about what Mike Lee has said. Mike Lee, speaking about Colby Jenkins, he is a hero, a West Point graduate, a Green Beret. He served with distinction. He stands for liberty, and he's committed to being very aggressive on not voting for large spending bills he hasn't seen, and fighting against some of the other government overreach that we have seen. So I decided to support him. So these are the things that Colby stands for: fighting against government overreach.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, AG.
All right.
Okay, and then
gotcha.
I'm gonna skip the auditor. Aside from you just giving me who you think, who your opinion is for the auditor.
Okay.
And then we have the state of Utah legislative race. So this is Don Ibsen versus Benyon. What's his first name? Chad Benyon. Mm-hmm. We'll land on that one, but let's quickly go to the AG position.
All right.
I think there's an opportunity to where this one is tough to differentiate candidates.
I'd like to also touch on the school board one too. I think that's really important.
But it's on the primaries.
It is on the primary. Joanne versus Kristen is on the primary.
Okay.
Okay. That is there.
Oh, I misunderstood that. Okay, so Attorney General, the single power in order to challenge the governor is the Attorney General.
Exactly.
It's a seat that has grown in its power because the executive branch has grown in its power. So therefore, the Attorney General has been a key challenge to hold governors, but also the legislatures from following the Constitution of the state, of the state, and also the federal government. So they can challenge both. They can challenge the federal government from overreach, and they can also challenge their own state rules and laws based off of protecting. Their job is solely to protect the Constitution of the state of Utah. Is that a fair?
Yeah, some of how you describe that is a little bit about the auditor as well, because they go back and kind of make sure that the government is doing what they're supposed to do. And I think, as you described that, but the Attorney General is also just about
but being able to take it to court. The auditor can't do that.
Oh no,
be able to challenge a law in court.
In court. That's where the Attorney
that's their
General,
job,
right? So that's a big part of it. But then there's also things about protecting Utah citizens from
that's the other thing. Yep,
businesses and people and other crimes in general.
When they're challenging their own government, it's on behalf of the citizenry of the state or the businesses, right?
So some people want to think that they're there on behalf of the government. Right, they think of them as the government's attorney, but they're really here as the people's attorney.
Well, they are the government's attorney. They are the state of Utah's government. So he is the head attorney for the governor, right? So if the governor wants to challenge the federal government, who's the only power rivaling
matters, that, right? Because I would still contend that is representing the people of the state.
Fair enough.
Okay,
fair enough.
Either challenging the federal government.
Either way, though, there is this pseudo role of working for the governor, but also having autonomy to do whatever they seem or deem necessary.
The autonomy is such a great point that you
the autonomy to decide. The governor can say, "Hey, I need you to do this," and he could say no, or she could say no.
Exactly. But this is an important part. The governor has recently tried to make the Attorney General's role an appointed position.
I know, and this is the thing too, is that it's a hypothetical though. He wants that, but that doesn't. The reality of that coming to fruition is
not in this race. I hear you. It wouldn't have happened for this race, but the part that I wanted to drive home with that is that he identified Derek Brown as a person that he would appoint.
But Derek Brown specifically says that he's opposed to appointing the AG role.
But Derek Brown is very pro Cox. I've asked him numerous times. So one was a hard conversation: is who are you in favor for governor? And he's emphatically pro Governor Cox.
Fair enough.
And then I asked him at convention, in a challenging way, right? Are you still pro Cox? Giving him an opportunity to say, given the progression since the last time, he said, nope, absolutely, I still am.
Yeah.
All right.
It's his opinion, right? But that doesn't necessarily make him a bad option for the job. In my perspective, who they endorse for it doesn't automatically disqualify you from being able to do the job.
Not disqualifying. Again, I treat all of these points as individual data points, right? Like I would never say. I will say in the conversation I've had though is that has been the singular like almost it's like the shot to the head. It's like he's a Cox guy. I'm out. Well, that's because that's a shorthand way of describing a bunch of other things, right? If this person can be pro Cox after what Cox has done to this state, that is representative of all of those things, right? Like he's only a 46% conservative. So that means more often than not conservative. Is that the type of leader that we want in the Attorney General's office? So it's not the whole story. It's not to me, it's not a singular point. Oh, he's off, but it's shorthand for many other things. I think that's why people say, it's the shot to the head.
Yeah.
Okay. So could he do the job? Probably. He has an amount of experience in court, but nowhere near what Frank Mylar has. I mean, Frank Mylar is the gold standard for what you want in experience in fighting for constitutional issues inside of the court, inside of a courtroom.
I won't disagree with that. Yeah.
Including the only one of the candidates that has argued in front of our state Supreme Court. Rachel Terry has both Frank Mylar and Rachel Terry have worked within the Attorney General's office in the past. That's right.
Derek Brown has also worked in the Attorney General's office in the past. He's also, I think he worked for Mike Lee's campaign at one point. He was the chair of the Republican Party here in Utah at one point.
Like a lot of people.
Like a lot of people. They all have some experience in the job, but going back to litigation and actual challenging decisions and challenging, the powers that be, right. Frank's the only one with the experience.
The only one. And Frank does pro bono work, helping constitutional organizations fight against federal overreach.
How do we fact check that? Like I've attempted to say, how do I know if it's actually pro bono other than just taking somebody's word for it?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, do we have to go look at somebody's W-2 and stuff like that?
Well, it just seems like if you're going to run, if the singular like value is that you're doing it without getting paid, mm-hmm. That's why you say pro bono.
Maybe the organization is the one that can back that up, right? Yeah, and I forget the name of the organization, but there's an organization, America something, that he works a lot with.
I think probably just more important beyond the pro bono thing is the fact of who he is representing, who are coming to him and saying, "Hey, I need your help," and he's saying, "I see value in representing you because there's not a lot of other people that are going to take the case."
And again, agree. And again, these are issues that we would expect from fighters, right? So like he's going up against federal government overreach, right? So a lot of the cases that he takes on is he's helped a lot of people fight, whether it's state or federal government, on vaccine mandates, right? So like somebody says, "Oh, I got fired because I didn't take the vaccine." He goes and fights for them. Mm-hmm. Or I'm being pressured to do it and they're telling me I'm going to fire them. He goes and fights for them. And he does a lot of those cases, healthcare workers specifically, to help them keep their jobs. So that way they don't lose in light of this, tyrannical vaccine mandate thing that has been a plague on our society.
Yeah. I think, and he's worked outside of the state. So I think the biggest a hesitation I have with Rachel Terry is she's been a part of the state. So she's worked in the Attorney General's office, but she's worked on behalf of the state. She claims Governor Cox as being her boss, right?
She claims, exactly.
So like just having that idea is like, okay, are we electing a person? The whole purpose of having the AG elected by the people is that they are outside of the influence, independent and autonomous to challenge those roles.
Right.
It seems very difficult for me to imagine her to stand up against a previous boss, previous boss that she probably actually likes. I don't even think she's ever said anything negative. She hasn't challenged him or the establishment that she'd made her career out. 20 years of experience dedicated the last decade in advocating for Utah. So she spent a decade representing the government already. Not
only does she feel that Governor Cox is her boss, but she feels like she can't make a claim about whether she is supportive of him in his reelection bid or not. So
which is an odd campaign strategy.
It's a very odd strategy to say.
But I can see how it's tough.
I won't say, right?
She's picking the I plead the fifth. I plead the fifth. She's playing the fifth.
But the funny thing is she doesn't realize how it hurts her and Governor Cox at the same time to say that, because what she's saying is, and she said this, I don't want to risk my job by saying one way or the other. Okay, what kind of indictment is that on Governor Cox now? Right? She is actively, by saying that, she's saying, if I were to tell Governor Cox what I really felt about Governor Cox, I might lose my job.
Yeah.
Right? So she is actually, by saying that she can't say something, she is in fact saying something.
I think that's a poor strategy.
But it's a very poor strategy that she won't say, who she supports.
Yeah.
For fear of her job.
Yeah.
Right?
Frank won handedly.
Yes.
Handedly.
Yeah. It was, I didn't know the percent. I think it was in the 70s. I think it was way.
Because she has her as a convention nominee as well.
Oh, then it wasn't. Sorry, my bad. This is one. Oh, no, I remember this one. This is the 9-vote one.
Oh, what happened?
9-vote difference.
Oh, okay. So he didn't win as handedly as
sorry. Difference between him getting over the threshold and her not getting over the threshold. So 9 more votes, he would have gotten 60%, which means she would not have gotten through because she wouldn't have been able to get 40%.
Got it.
Right.
Got it.
So
Derek's on the ballot because he got signatures. He got signatures.
That's right.
From what
Frank
I understand,
did win. It's like 50.
I think the lieutenant governor is his campaign
change.
manager, or is on his campaign.
Yes.
Or treasurer. Maybe she's like the treasurer of his campaign.
Deidre Henderson is managing his money for his campaign.
I think so. I think that's true. I think I saw that.
Yes.
So just as much, I really did enjoy my conversation with Derek. If you listen to that episode, he's a sharp guy. I think Frank has a lot of things going for him. I will say this: I'm not going to let it go unmentioned. Is that he's innocent until proven guilty.
Okay.
Trent Christensen, who was also running for Attorney General, I believe.
Right. Yeah.
He sent a text message and filed it with the Murray City Police and said that he offered him a job for his endorsement.
Sorry, let me try to add some clarity how you worded it, because you used a lot of he's in there. Trent filed a thing to the police saying that Mylar texted Trent an offer to be on his team.
Hey, Trent, in my last day of trial, and by God's grace, my campaign has picked up more steam. I won Weber, and there was only 10 minutes. Overwhelmingly won Davis. If you could endorse me before the convention, I would definitely include you in my office. Think about it for a few days. Thanks. Good luck today.
Right. All right. So now...
Then, an hour later, a few hours later, okay, that was at 8:03 a.m. At 2 o'clock that same day, he texts Christensen, Mylar texts Christensen again and says,
he said it called
no quote here. So this is the Deseret. They didn't quote him. He said he didn't mean to send the text message, and he said it was not an offer. He said he was in trial and had mistakenly sent the message. Christensen responded and said, all good. Give me a call when you have a second. You're good, Frank. Okay. And then I called him, reiterated that it was a mistake, should not have been sent. It was in trial at the time, blah, blah, blah. So he in an odd way, he's admitting that he sent the text message, and then there was a recanting of that.
That's right.
Within the same moment, not after he was called out on it.
Right.
But he recanted it immediately, realized he had made a mistake. I can see how there's lots of ways to spin this in whatever way you want, really. Right.
There probably is, but he did, I mean, you can call it spin. He did provide a reason for how that happened. In this article, I believe it says that he thought Trent Christensen had already dropped out of the race. And that's why he had sent that message. I'm not surprised that there was confusion around Trent Christensen's campaign. Trent, from the very beginning, was having troubles with his bar license in the state of Utah. And I talked to him at every single time that I could with, what's the status of your license? And each time was, oh, I'm going to get it really soon. And then months later, I'm going to get it really soon. Not months, I guess it was weeks later. Every time is, oh, it's going to work out. I'll have it in time. No problem at all. But each time there was news about another hiccup and him not getting it, and another hiccup and him not getting it. So I believe it's rational to me that
this is the only thing I'll say.
Okay.
Whether or not he was in the race or out of the race at the time.
Yeah.
He's trading an endorsement for inclusion in the office. The idea is, what we know is it's something that happens. We can't be in denial.
Everybody does it.
We can't be in denial that it happens.
And
when it's put out in front of you, it's hard to ignore.
When it's put when
you're presented the evidence that is actually happening.
Yeah.
Right. It's hard to ignore.
Well, of course. Yeah. Because you're saying that we suspected all along. Right. We've got proof now.
We're just talking about this before with money, right? The influence comes in lots of different ways. And so this is one of those things that, hey, this is a piece of influence that isn't being traded in dollar value,
right?
But that is being obvious. Now, Trent going to Murray City Police, what was his motive in taking it to the police? He's claiming that it's his ethics as an attorney and the bar and all these things. It's really that to me is very interesting.
Look,
why he took so long to come out with this.
Right.
All these things together. I think it's a window into the political system is messy.
Yeah.
And tough to navigate through. And I'm sure you'll hear about this. And we're back to laying out all the options as a candidate. It's our job as delegates, but then also as voters to make the best possible decision that we can in stamping our approval or voting for that individual. And so I look at the body of things that Frank Mylar has done over the course of his career and otherwise. And in opposed to Rachel Terry, I think he's far more qualified, far more capable, definitely going to stand up with some courage there against overreach from the state or the federal government.
I talked relatively deeply with both of those candidates, and I find that Frank Mylar is a fighter and will fight for constitutional issues and conservative issues, and Rachel Terry is not a fighter.
Yep.
She is a go along and establishment. Stronger first.
And the influence from outside sources to Derek Brown is suspicious because he worked for lobbying companies. There's a lot of things to say. Well, you're trying to make too many concessions. If you just like the guy, that's one thing. But you're having to do some gymnastics to say that he's not being influenced, money aside, influenced in other ways.
And the funny thing is I've talked to people and they're like, man, I'm so tired of all the corruption that happens in the Attorney General's office. And I go, yeah, if you want to continue that, then vote for Derek Brown. I mean, like he is the epitome of being connected with all of the high people. Like all of the people in power is who he's connected with.
Okay, we have to get to the last one. We were going to cover auditor. I want to get to Don because we're right at 2 hours. I gotta give these guys a break. Here we go. What's the district?
It's
the
Senate
only one in Southern Utah.
It's Senate 29.
Senate 29.
Yeah. So this is a state Senate position. It's the only position that's entirely within Washington County. So it was at the county convention that we went through the nominating process in convention for this race. Ipsen lost that, meaning fewer votes, but with Washington County, we have a 70% threshold in order to win the convention outright. And Chad did not get 70%. It was high 50s, I believe. I don't know if I have it noted down here, but high 50s in his percent. And so he didn't hit the threshold.
Which is interesting because, never mind, keep going.
Don tried to gather signatures, submitted the signatures, and ended up having enough of them rejected that he didn't hit the threshold. So this is the downside when you go and pay signature gatherers, is sometimes shenanigans happen and people sign other people's names.
I think there's a weird there's like a couple of like requirements to. It's not just a signature. It has to be like a specific human. Like the name has to be able to be legible, because I think you got to print the name and a signature.
Yeah, and they do signature matching on it.
They do signature matching. Yep. Yeah. And so if the signatures don't match,
right,
or if that individual actually isn't in that area, they have to be an actual citizen of the district in which there's voting. I believe
that's absolutely correct.
So they're doing a lot of checking on that. So for sure. Shenanigans, or just the signature gatherers got a bunch of people that shouldn't have signed names there.
That's right.
So let's but they're both on the ballot.
They're both on the ballot. Let's go back to objective measures first, then we go to subjective. Utah grassroots, Don Ipson has a rating of 44%, even less than Governor Cox. And Chad Benyon has a lifetime 86%. So Chad used to be in the legislature. He has experience in the legislature. So he has a record that we can go back and look at. A lot of legislators have given him a reputation of, Chad is a minimizer, meaning he likes to pull bills and make them smaller, which I love. Like I want bills smaller. I want less in them. I don't want these mega bills that come through that are so complicated and pass a bunch of things. Don Ipson didn't even know that he voted for a bill that gave the children of illegal immigrants free health insurance. He didn't even know that he did that. And he didn't even know. All right.
Don.
Like
I can't validate. I don't know this was at a meet and greet, or?
Yes, I talked to him about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but if you've had some one-on-one conversations with Don, yeah, it's kind of his way or the highway.
He yelled at me one time.
I've seen him yell. I've seen him yell several times.
Yeah.
Even at the entire delegates were all gathering at Utah Tech, and he started arguing with the crowd. I was very shocked for a guy who has been, a political figure within Southern Utah for a long time. It was weird to see his interaction with a big group of people. I don't
think he's happy to be representing people. I think he's happy with the power, but I don't think he's happy with the people. There's a pretty famous text message that is going around where a constituent was asking him for his opinion on a vote, or more importantly, her trying to influence his vote. He didn't reply. She pinged again with like, "Hey, I'd like a reply. Like I pay for your salary. You work for us." And his reply back to her was, "Well, your contribution to my salary is 6.7 cents. Like he trivialized her opinion down to 6.7 cents. And this is documented. It's understood. He is wrong on the border. I have a video. I don't know if you want to cue it up, but we're well out of time. So let me just paraphrase. But he basically said, we have to make this illegal thing legal. We have to close the border and start over.
So this is where the playing the game, like the negotiating, this is where things start to get like the train is rattling and all the pieces are falling off the plane as it's barreling towards the ravine, right? I can't think of like the old Western where, someone's strapped to the end of the train tracks, and we it's almost like we lose our mind of all of the past in order to try to like solve this problem. And they're trying to play this, mental gymnastics of saying, we're just going to accept all the illegals that have come here, and then we're going to start over again.
Well, yeah, I mean,
and that to me sounds so ridiculous.
So to me, if I give him the most generosity, this could mean one of two things. He is either actively in favor of amnesty for all the illegal immigrants. So he says, make this illegal problem legal, close the border, start all over again. That's amnesty. I don't know any other way to interpret that other than saying it's amnesty. I'll give him that it's a 50% chance that it's not amnesty, and the 50% chance he doesn't know what he's talking about. Like he literally doesn't know the words that are coming out of his mouth.
I think this is my thought, is that there is a swelling momentum around how to solve the problem. And when stacking up the cards, right, you're trying to play the game. And this is what I think he did around the Dixie State name change, which I don't think it's something that's really important to a small Small. It's actually pretty big.
It's
a pretty big.
86% of this community
It's a pretty
didn't want it to
big
change.
percentage of the community that didn't want the name to change. I will say though that he's playing a game and saying we didn't have the votes, so that I am going to do the best way I know how to say, okay, if the solution is out of my control already, then I'm going to try to influence once the decision's made. How do we move forward? How do I stay in the game in order to influence post-apocalypse, right? Like right? Like I think in my mind, he's got to the point where he's saying, well, if I'm playing out all the pieces of the game, I see that the writing on the wall, the outcomes ahead. Instead of standing and fighting and saying, I'm willing to die on the sword, or I'm willing to stand up for my own conservative principles, constitutional principles, whatever that might be. Yeah. Instead of doing that, I want to stay in the game. So I'm going to recognize that this battle's been lost, and then I'm going to regroup over here. I'm going to fight over here. Because I think that's what he did with Dixie State. I think that's what in his mind, he rationalized the Dixie State thing by saying, I already lost the battle. I want to try to influence it after the
But just so I'm clear what you're saying, the regroup and fight over here is not on that Dixie State name change anymore. It's on some other issue, because there was no regrouping and trying to refight that same battle. That battle got lost and it's done. So, I mean, I agree with you. I think it's very possible that he calculated, how do I maintain power within the legislature, and giving up on that might have given him a means to get other things passed not related to that.
I think his argument,
power.
What I've talked to him about in particular was his argument was to keep the door open for allowing for a name change in the future. The bill was allowing for, because now the ability to change the name again isn't closed. It's not
but
like
that's never the case. How could it have been?
And it
closed?
also allowed them to keep the Dixie State camp or the Dixie campus on there.
Sure.
This is his argument. He said, because the verbiage in the bill, I think if you go back and read the bill, the verbiage in the bill allows them to fight the battle another day, is what his argument is. It says it allows them to fight the battle, whether he does or not. Yeah. I'm just telling you when he said that to me, this is where I'm talking about the regroup and fight later.
But how is that a win to say a bill says we can fight this another day? Every bill can be fought another day. Every bill can be appealed. Every
SB 54 is
any new bill can be written that undoes a previous bill. A bill never needs to say, hey, by the way, we allow for this bill to be changed later. Every bill has that. So it's not a win.
Sometimes they have sunset rules. Sometimes they don't.
Whether they have that's not what this
one
is.
Individual, like the State Board of Education. I think there was some argument of whether who can change the name of the, like who's
there was an argument about who was allowed to change it.
So this is what I'm saying is that like by allowing it to stay within this specific group. I don't know all the details. So what I'm trying to drive home, the point I'm trying to drive home, is that I think. Being in the position as long as he is conceding on things that are not on principle and not on a foundation of, I really believe this thing and I'm going to represent the people of Southern Utah. Representation. It's I am going to try and continue to fight these battles. Yeah. And he's been doing that so long. Yeah. He's been doing that so long, and he's won for so long without real challenge that at this stage, when now being faced with an actual challenger that might take his seat,
that's right.
It's showing up as frustration in a lot of the meet and greets, or apathy. A lot of times, the perspective is that he doesn't care what the people of Southern Utah want,
and he's sure he doesn't. Okay, so on the Dixie thing, we can wrap that one up because there's so many others. He made a point to say, I'm in leadership. I have my feet under the table. People listen to me. I can influence them. This is his pitch for why he should be reelected, because he is in a position of power. Why didn't he use that power to save Dixie State? So from when his constituents told him 86%, but 85% of the people wanted it to stay Dixie State University. Why didn't he use that power? Why did he pass when it was his turn to vote? And this is what he yelled at me about. I said, why did you pass? And he goes, what does that matter?
This goes back to my argument
of
like why it's like he's playing this game,
right? But why can't you vote? Why can't you vote
on the wall
and then go try to influence? Like his answer to me was, I was busy influencing other people to vote my way. Why can't you vote and influence?
Yeah,
why do you lose influenceability?
It's not a great
because
argument.
you vote. It's not a great argument. It doesn't ring true. And this is what we have to do when we look at people rationalizing their decisions, is hold it to our level of, does it ring true or not? And this doesn't. He's not conservative enough. Is he 0% conservative? No, I'm not saying that. Has he got zero done for Southern Utah? No, I'm not saying that. He has passed things. He's not conservative enough, and he's not gotten enough done when it really matters for our state.
I think it's clear
for Southern Utah.
It's clear that he is representing a different group of people. He's not representing Southern Utah.
That's right.
Or at least he's not saying and showing that he's representing that.
Right.
I'm not seeing it in any
He
level.
doesn't put himself in front of the people to be evaluated.
And he's beloved. He's beloved by the people that know him and the people that
he has friends for sure.
He's done a lot of things and a lot of great things for this community. He's donated lots of money. There's lots of things, veterans and the homeless shelters, and he's done a lot of great things. I don't want to minimize any of that stuff.
100% of the people that I've talked to who have said, I support Don Nipson, have said he's my friend or he's my family member. Like this is the single largest reason that I have heard people say.
And that
I'm standing
a lot of
by him
people,
because he's my
yeah.
friend.
Yeah.
Right. And that's meaningful too. He's not put himself out in front of the people to be heard directly. Even at convention candidates were given 3 minutes to speak. He gave
somebody else.
He gave two other people a majority of his time to talk on his behalf.
Sitting elected officials.
No.
Yeah,
No.
Colin.
One was, but Brent Hall was not.
Oh, Brent Hall wasn't. Okay.
Yeah, Brent Hall's not an elected official. So Colin Powell,
Colin Jack. Yeah,
Powell.
Colin Powell.
So then he won't debate. He won't debate, Chad. Zero debate scheduled, and he won't do it.
Right.
He can't get in front of people and speak.
I think he doesn't want to.
He doesn't.
I think that's like the main thing.
It comes down to because he can't.
Maybe.
Right? Like if he could, if he was confident in his ability to speak in front of people, he would do it. Mm-hmm. He's not confident in his ability.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's hit two things on Chad Binion. Oh, we went 2 hours. People, if you're still sticking with us, I hope you listen to us on 1.5 speed. I hope you listen to 1.5 speed.
Yeah.
If you're still sticking with us. What are two strengths with Chad? The minimizer, I think that's a great one, but give me two more reasons why. In the face of the unknown versus the known, what he has a previous record.
He does have a record, so that it's not totally unknown.
Yep.
He won convention at 58%. So it was really close to the 60% threshold, although Washington County is 70%. Okay. So another strength, transparency. He has promised to bring much better transparency into how things are happening and what he's doing in our state Senate. We have zero of that right now. We don't ever hear from our senator about what's happening because and I've been to these legislative sessions where he is present to give a report back. He speaks the least out of all the others. So he's up there with our state legislators, and he mumbles for a minute and a half, 2 minutes, where the others are taking 8-10 minutes to talk about all of the legislative wins. He doesn't come back and report what's actually happening. I have asked him about his votes. He doesn't remember them.
Pros for Chad. Let's stick with pros for Chad. Why do we like Chad?
Transparency, accountability, a strong fighter for American First policies. He is more conservative than Don Nipson is. 86% rating, lifetime rating on Utah Grassroots.
What outside of, I mean, what does he do? What's his job qualifications? Like, was he an attorney? What was his?
Well, he was in, because he has a record. So he was in the state legislature. I don't know how I can represent exactly. I know he does something for the state jail system, like something like fighting for what are they called? They're not officers. What are they called when they work at the jail?
Corrections officers?
Corrections officers. Fighting for corrections officers' rights, or something along those lines. I don't remember exactly.
Okay. So probably a little bit more research. I need to get Chad on the podcast. Our schedules we haven't matched up on schedules at this stage. Do it. And then I haven't been able to get a hold of Don. I get his representation just from the meet and greets and the few one-on-one conversations I've had with both Chad and Don. It seems like it seems like Chad is going to be a fresh perspective that actually is wanting to represent Southern Utah. Other than that, there's not much more to be said.
Right. We're out of time, and I can't let this go without saying Joanne Brenton for state school board.
I interviewed Joanne too, so if you want to check out that episode, I haven't interviewed one-on-one with Kristen Norton.
Primary ballot.
Yep, she won by like 86%.
It was 80%, high 86, almost 87%. She was one of the strongest winners.
I thought this wasn't I guess they changed it. That's right. It was partisan. It used to not be partisan.
Our local school board is nonpartisan, and our local school board positions
state board is partisan.
That's right.
That's right. Okay, so you're gonna have Kristen Norton, Joanne Brenton.
Kristen Norton has not fought hard enough to remove pornography from our schools. They're still there. Even though laws have been passed to pull them out, they're still there because the process for how to pull them out wasn't made clear enough. And she has not been a strong enough backer to protect our children. That's the bottom line. She argues it, but the only thing that matters is what are the results.
It's overwhelming. The delegation to get 86% of anybody, of any group of people to agree on something is pretty powerful.
I think there were only like 3 of all the candidates across the
wasn't trying.
Yeah,
she was at every.
She fought for it. Yeah, she was trying, but she was a signature gatherer, and had enough signatures. Her signatures weren't validated here in the county; they were validated in the state. And she used the same signature gatherers as Don Nipson did.
If I had the money, I'd do signature. I don't see any reason why not. You take it there's no reason to fight with a hand behind your back if you have the ability to do it. It seems like that there's no reason why you wouldn't.
I have told candidates who started signature gathering, don't let people tell you that that's a down. Like if the law allows it, you should try it.
Agreed.
Use every means possible. Use every means possible that's legal. And at the same time say, I want to fight against it because I don't think it's right. And at the same time say, I'm going to do my darndest to be the convention winner.
Yeah.
Right? All of those things can be true at the same time.
It's true. Auditor for the auditors.
Tina Cannon. That race was close between Tina Cannon and Ricky Hatch.
Ricky Hatch. Yeah.
So it was super close at convention. Ricky Hatch is a fine enough person. I've heard associations of Ricky Hatch with more of the establishment and Tina Cannon more of a fighter.
Okay, there's pictures of him right there. Do some research. You could go to the wcrputah.com/candidates to get the bios links and all the information on who's going to be on your primary ballot. They're going to be in the mail probably this week or next because this episode will drop June 4th. The episode will drop.
Yeah, so you'll have them real soon.
This is a lot of information. We're going to try to chop them up into some chunks. Nice. So that if we could just, hey, here's this one, here's this one, here's this one. Yeah. If you want to listen to the whole thing, thanks for tuning in, guys, the whole episode.
Absolutely.
We could talk about so much more.
So much more.
It's tough to stay just on track to just run through them. I could see how the news, it's either not enough information or too much information.
I mean, the news wants to give you things in bite-sized nuggets. It's not enough.
It's tough.
Right.
So if you got value out of this, for sure, please share it out. We want to do our best to educate as many people as we can. These are our opinions, just our own. We're just 2 guys in Southern Utah that care. And thanks for coming on, man. You do care a lot. You have spent a ton of time.
Thank you. You have too.
And man, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate
you.
On
doing this.